Hello, everyone. Welcome back to art. We have one more lesson for our Countdown to Spring unit. And if you see the feathered friends behind me, I bet you can guess what it's going to be. So let's get started. As I said, this is our last Countdown to Spring lesson. And then next week, we will begin our last unit on pop art, which is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to change my screen and we will get started. I'm a little excited about this lesson because I really like the feathered guys that are behind me. And you may too. Okay, friends, you should see my screen. I'm going to enlarge it here for you. Okay, so speaking about birds and feathered friends, there's Maggie and Molly bird watching. They were watching the cardinals, actually. There's a bunch of cardinals that live in one of those bushes right outside that window, and they have been quite the observant kitties, watching them come in and out of those bushes in the mornings and in the evenings. I think they'd like to meet a couple of them, but they're going to stay safe behind that screen there. It'll keep them out of trouble, maybe. Look how big Molly's gotten. Molly looks like Berkeley the bear. She's getting really fluffy. And there's just a couple other pictures of them being kind of crazy. Just kind of. I mean, Molly had that feather thing above her head on the ground and in her mouth in about 5 seconds after I took that picture. But there's the Maggie Molly update for today. All right, friends, we are going to get in our time machine and travel back to the 1800s. So that's a long time ago. That's back before there were computers, before there were even cameras in the really early 1800s. And if you wanted to remember what something looked like so that you could share it with someone, you couldn't take a picture of it. You couldn't Google it. You'd have to see it with your own two eyes, and you'd have to draw it. So we are going to talk about a scientist today who observed something in nature, observed birds in nature, that is. It's kind of obvious by this point, so that we could learn more about them and he could share it with other people. You have probably seen these guys in your yard or around town since spring has started. You've probably seen some robins too. I should have put them in the picture, but the birds are very fun and interesting to study. Not only are their feathers and their beaks and their wings unique, they also each have their own special song. I love hearing cardinals make their sweet sound in the morning. So who's that scientist and artist, by the way, a scientist and artist who studied birds and drew them so that others could learn about them too? His name is James Audubon, and that's who we're going to learn about today. Here are two of his drawings of cardinals and blue jays that he created back in the 1800s, when if you wanted to learn or share what you knew about something, you had to draw it. So, who was James Audubon, or John James Audubon? He was an American painter and ornithologist. And that's a mouthful, but an ornithologist is someone who studies birds. So that's all you need to know. He was a scientist who studied birds, and he was interested in birds his entire life. On Schoology, I'm going to link a book, a book that will be read aloud to you if you click on it, about his life as a young boy in Pennsylvania when he was just becoming interested in birds. If you want to listen to it, it's a picture book. So he studied and drew birds and their habitats across North America. He traveled the continent trying to find birds, different birds, and drawing them and learning all he could about them so he could share it with other people. You may have also heard of something called the Audubon Society. He didn't create the Audubon Society, but it's named after him, and that's a organization that works to conserve, take care of, and protect the habitats of birds. And a habitat is where an animal lives, like its ecosystem, or it's a part of an ecosystem. You may have learned about habitats and ecosystems in science. So here are a few more of his birds. He drew birds of all kinds. So we got swans. We got a funny flamingo there. Looks like he's upside down. But he traveled the continent so he could find every bird he could possibly find and document it. In fact, he even documented some birds, or drew some birds, that are no longer alive, or they're extinct now. This is a parrot. It's the only parrot that was native to North America, to the continent where we live, and it's extinct. So some of his artwork and what he learned helps us learn about things that are no longer here. So birds are pretty amazing. Not only are they colorful and have sweet sounds, they can fly. Not all animals can fly, or have feathers. So what we're going to do today, we are going to draw our own bird. We're going to draw a cardinal in particular because that is the state bird of West Virginia. It is also one of the characters in my children's books, Clay the Cardinal. So I thought that's what make him extra special to draw. So I will show you how I draw a cardinal for my books. You're going to learn how to draw a children's book character, if you want to look at it that way. Even though he's a bird, he's still a character. So I am going to close out of this and bring the screen back so you can get your paper and your crayons or colored pencils ready so that we can learn how to draw a cardinal. And the steps that I show you how to draw a cardinal today, you could use them for drawing any bird. They're all kind of built the same way, at least songbirds are. Okay, so I will see you over on my table in just a moment. Okay, everyone, you should see my table, and I have something to share with you. So when I was your age, I loved to draw birds, and my grandfather gave me this book. It's just a little guide about different birds and just some facts about each one. It's really old. He wrote his name on the front cover there because he wrote his name on everything. It's a really old book and it's falling apart. But this is the book that I used when I was a kid to learn how to draw birds. And I would read the descriptions about them so that I could learn more about them and where they were located in the United States. Now, this was back before we had the internet and iPad, so if you wanted to learn things, you had to find it in a book. But there's the cardinal that I would use when I was your age to draw or to practice drawing cardinals. Also, wanted to share with these, I found these I used to draw cards for my teachers. And I would use this book to find the birds to give me the reference photo, which a reference photo is something that you can look at so you draw it so it looks like real life. But these are just a few of the cards that I never got a chance to give my teachers back in the day. So I drew a mallard, and there's a robin, and there's a pheasant. Here's a red-winged blackbird. I have a lot of those that live around my house right now. And there's a purple martin. I really like to draw birds. And then we're back to the pheasant. So, and I drew the blue jay and the cardinal for my teachers too, but I think I gave those out a lot. Oh, there's I think that's a nuthatch or a tufted titmouse there. I'm not sure. Oh, and there's my hummingbird. Okay, so I just wanted to share those things with you from when I was a kid, your age, and like to draw. And this is the cardinal that we'll use as our reference photo today. So I'm going to set this off to the side. Now, I may not draw this cardinal exactly like the one in the book because I have my own style that I draw Clay the Cardinal in for my book. for when I do my illustration. So mine may look a little different than that one. So I want to show you something that's really cool though that you can do to help you practice drawing the shape of a bird. I'm going to show you this really quick. Just a quick tip here. And I'm going to use a scratch sheet of paper here. Use the back of another sheet of another use the back of another piece of paper. That's what I'm going to do. If you want to practice drawing the parts of a bird, and yes, there are parts of a bird, you can break it down into very basic shapes. So, a bird starts with a head. So you can practice drawing a circle. And then our bird is going to have a body. So we're going to draw an oval shape. And all I'm doing is going around and around and around, because when you do that, you're building muscle memory in your brain for how to draw anything. And then our bird is going to have wings. So I'm going to draw another oval for his wings. And this is just practice, okay? So you could just do this. It's like a good warm-up for your hand. Head, body, wings, and now he's going to have a tail, or she. Even she-birds have wings and tail. So I'm going to add another oval down here. So those are my basic parts of my bird. I got my wings, my body, my tail, my head, and then I'm going to have my beak. So I'm going to add a triangle here for my beak. And then that cardinal will have a crest. This is just how I can warm up my hand. You don't have to, this is not your final product. This is just how you can warm it up, or how you can practice the parts so they become really familiar to you. And there's where the feet will be if he's sitting still or if he's sitting down. Okay, so these basic shapes are what will make up any songbird, okay? Or any birds that are similar to a cardinal, like a blue jay or goldfinch or a robin, the same basic shapes. So some of them may not have the crest, okay? So just going like this helps warm your hand up so that you get used to drawing a cardinal or any other bird. So let's take that and let's get our bird on our paper. So it doesn't matter if you have your paper landscape or portrait for this, okay? And you can draw it as large as you want or as small, depending on if you want to put anything else in your background. So I'm going to start by drawing his head. And I'm going very lightly on my paper, very lightly. Whisper lines, okay? And then I'm going to start with his body. Whisper lines, whisper lines. You can even whisper when you do it. And then I'm going to start with where his wings would go. And then I'm going to put his tail in. So this bird is going to be sitting on a perch. Maybe you've seen that. You've seen them sitting down and seen them sitting on a perch. Maybe you're sitting on a window or sitting on a bird feeder. Now I'm going to put in his beak. You know, all birds have unique beaks because they all eat different things. Some of them like smaller seeds. Some of them crack larger seeds. Some of them don't eat seeds at all. Some of them eat worms. And then I'm going to go up here and make my crest. And cardinals all have different crests. Some of them have really spiky crests, and some of them have smoother, shorter ones. So you can decide what you want to do there. So I've got my basic parts of my cardinal with my whisper lines. And if you'd like, you can just draw a really light line to connect his head to the rest of his body, because yes, he's got a neck. They do have a neck too. All right, so there are my basic parts to my cardinal. And yes, he needs feet. Yes, he needs feet. I know. So I'm going to just slide some diagonal lines right here, really tiny diagonal lines, and put some little curved C shapes on the bottom of them for his feet. Okay, so we've got our basic shape of our cardinal down. And then I'm going to just go around and lightly erase. Don't dig at your paper. Lightly erase the lines that I no longer need. or just clean it up a little tiny bit. So I don't need this line here that connects his head to his body, so I can erase that, and I can erase around the line to it that connects the circle and his wings there. Not that his wings are attached to his head, but we can erase that. We don't need that now. All right, so there is our basic shape of our cardinal. We've got our body, our head, our wings, and our tail. Now I'm going to put a tiny little horizontal line there for his beak. I'm going to clean my line up there a little bit. You can always go back, and that's why I always say make your whisper lines, go really lightly. And now I want to put his eye in. And I'm saying he because I'm going to make this a boy cardinal because boy cardinals are bright red. And I'm going to put a round circle for his eye. I'm not going to color it in all the way though because I want it to have a little gleam in it. And I'm going to go ahead also and take my pencil. And cardinals have a black mask. They have black, blah, blah, blah. They have black feathers, very light black feathers that are all around their beak. I'm not going to put it around over his eyes. Usually it goes a little over their eyes like a mask. I'm just going to draw it so it goes down his chest a tiny little bit. I'm just wiggling my pencil back and forth. I might go over that with a black crown or colored pencil in just a moment. Alrighty, so there is my cardinal sitting at attention. Maybe he's just wondering what's going on, planning his day. So now we're ready to color our cardinal. Now, actually, before we color the cardinal, you can put him on a branch. So I'm going to just draw a very quick, I'm just wiggling my pencil back and forth, branch. Maybe my branch comes up like this right there, and maybe it goes down. You can draw any type of branch you want. And I'm not going to, maybe he's just on the perch of a tree branch here. Put a couple little lines here. But it doesn't need to be exactly like mine. I made that a little too thick. But since I didn't press hard, I can erase that easy peasy. All right, so there's his branch that he's on. You can always go back and add more. All right, so now that he's sitting down, let's talk about how we're going to color him. All right, so what you can do, I might use my colored pencils for this here. So I've got some reds and a red orange, and I've got some oranges too for his beak, because I want to make sure his beak stands out. So let me get my colored pencils here, and then I'm going to start with maybe the areas where he's a little, that's maybe not the right color. I'm going to take my colored pencil and I'm going to color in his chest. I'm just taking it, going back and forth very quickly, shading it in. I'm going to leave some spots that aren't colored in yet because I'm going to go back and add some detail. So yes, cardinals, like all birds, have lots of tiny feathers. So I'm going in, I'm just making these fast feathery marks all over clay, or if it is clay, the cardinal. Actually, I like to give clay a cheek. I give him little cheeks. I know that's not what a real cardinal would you see in the wild, but I always give him a little cheek there. You don't have to do that, but I give my little clay a cheek. So I'm going to lightly go over him with a red, and then I'm going to use like a reddish orange, and then I'm going to fill in on his belly a little bit. And I like the way the reddish orange, you could even use just a plain orange, blends in with the red. Cardinals are very bright. The male cardinals are very bright. Now, you know why the male cardinals are bright? So they can attract the female cardinals. And then the female cardinals are brown, a little red, so that they can camouflage in, because they have to stay with their babies, have to stay at the nest. I'm going to go over the wings a little bit. Now, how much detail you add to the wings is totally up to you. So I'm going to go over clay a little bit more. And you could do this with crayon too. I had to get some supplies to get me through the rest of the year, so I've got some extra colored pencils that cover more like your colored pencils would cover, because I use a colored pencil for my illustrations that's not it works a little bit differently than yours. It's a really soft colored pencil, so it's not always how yours would turn out. So I try not to use those. That's why I use crayon a lot, because I know that's something that you have for sure. And I'm going to take this dark red. You could also use a brown. And I'm going to go around his belly. Go up around the crest there a moment. And I'm going to maybe add some details. Some short lines across his wings for all the feathers that make up his wings. I'll give his little cheek there some detail. I'm going to draw some lines going down. So all I'm doing is making lots of really short lines. And I'm just staying within the shapes that I drew for my cardinal. I'm going to go back and add that red orange to his cheeks. And then I'm going to take a yellowish orange, or you just use a yellow, and color his beak. And because cardinals do have a nice bright beaks, I'll go in with an orange. Brighten that up. And clay is about colored here, and you could go back and forth until you get him just the way you want it. And you can also go in and color his branch that he's on. And you can add some leaves. Maybe this is early in the spring and there aren't a lot of leaves on the branches yet. So you could add just a tip of color to the branches just when they're getting their buds on them. But friends, that is how you draw a cardinal. And that is what James Audubon did when he was in the forest and he was drawing birds that he saw and wanted to record so that he could share them with other people, so he could share what he was learning and seeing in the wild. Because remember, back in the 1800s, there were people that had, not explored certain parts of what is now the United States. So explorers and scientists had to draw pictures of what they would see when they got there. Okay, so hope you now can draw Clay the Cardinal, or you don't have to call him Clay. I call it Clay the Cardinal because that's my character in my book, but now you can draw a cardinal, and maybe you will see one this week, or maybe you'll see another bird, and I encourage you to draw some more birds that you come across. Draw what you see. Maybe you'll start your own card collection or a sketchbook of the birds that you see in your backyard. So have a super week. I hope you enjoyed doing this. And remember, you can practice making these simple shapes to get your mind to remember how you draw anything like a bird. All right, friends, I will see you next week. Take care. Be well.